You knew this one was coming. Hey, it's Josh Vergara from Android Authority. What's going on, everybody? And this is the Samsung Galaxy S5 versus the Apple iPhone 5S. It's quite literally more of the same in both cases with these phones when it comes to design, and quite literally in the case of the iPhone 5S, which features the same body as its predecessor, the iPhone 5. Most of the changes are in terms of internal hardware, with the only noticeable outward changes being the introduction of a fingerprint scanner integrated into the physical home button, which results in a nice looking chrome ring around the home button, and the rear camera now coming with a dual LED flash. That being said, expressing disappointment at this isn't particularly just, as we all know that this is exactly what Apple does with every S iteration of their smartphone. Making a return is an elegant, classy metal unibody design that definitely feels like a premium device. Now, I could actually pretty easily repeat the same line above for the Samsung Galaxy S5 and pretty much get away with it. It features a similar form factor to its predecessor, and other than the obligatory specs bump, the noticeable outward change is a fingerprint scanner integrated with a physical home button. But that's not all. The capacitive keys flanking the home button are back, but this time the menu key has been replaced by a more helpful recent apps key. The other major change with the Galaxy S5 is, of course, the much talked about back cover, made of a soft touch plastic with a perforated or dimpled design. Love it or hate it, it's entirely up to you. But when it comes to Samsung's design policies, any change is a much needed change, and the move away from glossy plastic is still certainly very welcome. Now, when it comes to size, the Galaxy S5 is obviously in a class of its own compared to the much smaller iPhone 5S, which is essentially dwarfed by the 5.1-inch screen found on the Samsung flagship. However, when it comes to handling, the Galaxy S5 is pretty much the most accessible 5-inch screen device out there. Meanwhile, the iPhone 5S will feel at home in any hand and pocket. It comes down to whether or not you want a certain amount of screen real estate on the devices, and you have to know what the handling will be like as a result. Speaking of those screens, it is quite hard to compare the two, given the 1.1-inch difference between them, which results in a much larger surface for the Galaxy S5. The 4-inch display of the iPhone 5S has been praised by experts for its accurate color reproduction, brightness, and viewing angles, and it does a fantastic job. But Apple has used the same Retina display as found in the iPhone 5 in its latest flagship, with a resolution of 1136 by 640, resulting in a pixel density of 326 ppi. On the other hand, the Samsung Galaxy S5 features a 5.1-inch Super AMOLED display with a 1080p resolution and a much higher pixel density of 432 pixels per inch. As we mentioned a number of times in previous reviews and comparisons, the colors on this display absolutely pop, and as I put it, they really pop out of the screen and punch you in the face. And the bright and colorful TouchWiz UI really shines through. Nowadays in the smartphone game, we do have to generally give the nod to larger screen experiences when it comes to media consumption experiences. After all, our smartphones are really becoming where we look at all of our media, whether it's movies or playing games. And a 4-inch screen on the iPhone 5S just might not provide that experience that you're looking for. Yes, it does get nods for ease of use and pocketability, but once you try a larger screen, you might find that the dwarfed screen of the iPhone 5S just isn't what you're looking for, because the larger screen is much more fun. Now, as we move on to performance, we find that a straight-up specs comparison might not necessarily be very fair, because both devices cater to very different ecosystems, so real-world performance is what we'll talk about. iOS is known for its fluid animation and impressive optimization, and while iOS 7 may have had its issues, a lot of the kinks have been worked out with the update to 7.1. The iPhone's UI sails through most tasks, and with a processor that is significantly faster than was found in its predecessor, the iPhone 5S does really well in terms of performance in real-world usage. The Samsung Galaxy S5, on the other hand, features the best processing package currently available in the Android arena. The Snapdragon 801 processor clocked in at 2.5 GHz, backed by the Adreno 330 and 2 GB of RAM. Now, TouchWiz also has had its issues in the past with stutter and lag in previous iterations, but as we have found in the Galaxy S5, you'll rarely, if ever, see a hiccup. Performance is as smooth as it has ever been, and the device easily handles anything you can throw at it. Now, especially because of the drastically different architectures, both groups of users should have absolutely no complaints when it comes to the performance of either smartphone in this versus. Now, if it came down to the sheer number of hardware features available, we would have to say that the Galaxy S5 would hands down take the lead. After all, it comes with everything from NFC to a micro SD card reader, an IR blaster, along with the newly added heart rate monitor, so the Galaxy S5 really tries to pack it all. Of course, wear and tear of the internal hardware will be at a minimum for the Galaxy S5 courtesy of its IP67 rating. The iPhone 5S seems quite limited when it comes to its hardware capabilities, but having it all doesn't necessarily make it the best. And it really comes down to how useful you actually find all of the various features offered on the Samsung flagship in the first place. And as mentioned earlier, both phones integrate fingerprint scanners, which serve a similar purpose, which is to add an extra level of security. The Galaxy S5 finger scanner is a swipe type, which means you need to swipe across the physical home button from top to bottom, which then unlocks your device. The iPhone 5S is a press type scanner, which means that you can just hold your finger to the scanner for a successful reading. Now, the usage of both scanners is quite limited for now, but we will say that the potential is there. Now, when it comes to battery life, you might find that the unit inside of the iPhone 5S seems a little bit meager at 1560 mAh. However, we always did find that it was able to get through a full days of work and play without much fuss at all. But I will say this, we all know those iPhone users that walk around maybe somewhere in the middle of the day asking, hey, does anybody have a charger? On the other hand, the Samsung Galaxy S5 with its decent 2800 mAh unit does quite well in the battery life department also, helped along by fantastic power saving modes, including an ultra mode that strips down the UI to a grayscale bare bones version. The battery of the Galaxy S5 is also removable, which gives you the opportunity to carry around a spare. So ultimately, when it comes to the hardware department, we find that the iPhone 5S is really a what you see is what you get experience, but that experience is also pretty damn good in its own right. On the other hand, the Samsung Galaxy S5 does try to do everything at once. It tries to be more than just your smartphone, and whether or not it's even very great at any one of those things is up for debate, but it kind of depends on what kind of experience you want. If you want all of the tools that are available inside of the hardware of the Galaxy S5, then it's the one